How would you feel if I talked to you in a baby voice? What about if I talked to you really, really slowly to make sure I knew you could understand me? Why we do these things is explained by the communication accommodation theory. In order to understand why we communicate the way that we do, we have to have a good understanding of what the accommodation theory is. This theory is based on adaptation and the idea that we adjust the way we talk and communicate with the people around us. This could be differences based on age, race, rate of speech, speech patterns. This theory explains why we talk differently around our friends rather than our parents or kids our own age or elderly people, or how you would talk differently to a person in a job interview versus just your friends hanging out on the playground. A good example of this is when we talk to elderly people and we will talk to them in a baby voice in order to accommodate them, or why we talk differently around people we want to fit in with, and we may begin to use words that we wouldn't usually use, but they use, and you want to fit in, so you want to use those words too. This has happened to me before when I went to visit Colorado, and everyone there was saying y'all all the time, so I thought I need to start saying y'all all the time. And then when I came back to Illinois and I noticed that no one else was saying y'all, I wasn't no longer fitting in, so I stopped saying it. This would be an example of converging. Along with converging, people might also diverge in a conversation, which is when you make no attempt to accommodate to the other person speaking. You begin to disassociate yourself from the conversation. This would be like if I spoke in a British accent around all my friends in a group, and I continued to talk like that even though no one could understand me. In some cases, we may also overcompensate in a conversation, like speaking very slowly to a person we don't think can understand us. Or if you like a boy and you really want him to like you back, so you try to seem interested in something you know he's interested in, even though you're really not. And I have a really good example of this that I did in high school. This kid was really into football and I really liked him, so I pretended to be into football, which I really wasn't. And I would look up all these football facts, and anytime he would talk about his favorite teams, I would be like, oh yeah, I agree with you, like totally, I know what you're talking about. Or like he'd be like, did you see that play? And I'd be like, yeah, definitely, it was awesome. When in reality, I had no clue what he was talking about. I just wanted him to like me and I wanted to fit in with him. In the end, this wasn't the best because I wasn't being true to myself, but now it's a good example of how I can explain communication accommodation theory. To further understand communication accommodation theory, it is important to see the connection between social identity theory, which explains why a person's self is compromised by the personal identity and the way we want to be perceived by others. Being aware of communication accommodation theory allows us to notice when we are diverging in a conversation or possibly when we're overcompensating in a conversation, both non-verbally and verbally. In other words, it would explain why we would want to seem cooler in a group and begin to communicate like them in order to fit in. This helped me to explain why I would act the way I did in high school. I always wanted to be part of the popular squad, so I would try to fit in, and that's how it was at my high school. So I would adjust the way I talked to seem a lot cooler than I actually was. And when I was hanging out with my friends, and God forbid my mom would call, I would talk differently on the phone with my mom because I didn't want her to perceive me differently than I would talk with my friends in everyday lives. In other situations, I talked to my mom completely different in a group setting than I would if it was just me and her one-on-one. And all of this is because we accommodate to others in our own everyday expressions, verbally and non-verbally. I hope this gave you a better understanding of the communication accommodation theory. Thank you.